everybody. Welcome back to Everyone is Addicted. Today's guest, Mike, has graciously come on to share his knowledge and experience with addiction. So, hi, Mike. It's nice to have you
Hello.
on and take it away.
Yeah. Okay, Jasmine. I want to thank you. Start by thanking you and saying, I very much appreciate your story. And as we talked a little bit before coming on air, and everything that you do on your end to help the homeless and the needy. And I'll share this with your audience, and we can kind of fill the blanks in. But I lived in two different military homeless shelters in my lifetime. I was going through a lot of struggles with my alcohol addiction. This was back, well, I've struggled with alcohol addiction my entire life. I also struggled with smoking marijuana when I was younger. I was actually kicked out of the Air Force for smoking marijuana with a bunch of guys.
Oh, yeah, they're
And
strict.
long story short, long story short, what I did was I had led such a hard life. I'm 60 now. So, what I did the entire time I was going through all of my trials was I was always writing for some reason. And I can't really explain why, but I have a saying, and I've been on several podcasts now, and people laugh when I say this, but my autobiography is called The Gutter Gospel, The Road to Redemption, because I personally believe everybody in life has been in the gutter and addicted or struggled or had challenges that they
Mhm.
had to face and overcome. And, right now, what my life's about is to get the awareness out there to as many people as possible to say, you know what? You are loved. You're here for a purpose. You have a purpose. And I share that message. It just so happens that these days, after looking back on my life and everything I had to overcome, that I really am thankful. Number one, I need to say that and get that out there that I survived it all, because I shared this story on one of my podcasts I did, and I only shared it on one, and it got very personal for me. That my very first suicide attempt, I'm a two-time suicide survivor. I got to get that out there. But anyway, my dad passed away when I was 15 years old, and we had just moved to this new town about 3 years earlier. And it was really hard on me because I had one friend in high school. So, and
Me
his
too.
older brother was killed. His older brother was killed in a car accident a couple of years earlier by a drunk driver just outside of town.
Oh,
But
that's
what I confessed on that one podcast was I said, not only did I try and commit suicide, but I loaded up a car full of my so called friends when I was drunk at the age of 16, 1 year after my dad died. And I just hit this highway at 100 miles an hour with blind spots coming on both sides. So not only did I not care if I died, but if I took out people with me. That's how down and out and desperate I was. So, I didn't have a lot of options after high school or during high school. My mom made it clear that after my dad died, that we were losing everything to the bank, both the house and our little clothing store that we just opened. So um, that was why I was out of options. I tried college for a year. I flunked out of that really quick. So then I had student loans to pay and et cetera, et cetera. I joined the Air Force a year later. And, I spent my whole tour in Texas, which sucked because it was like I wanted to travel overseas. That was one of the big reasons I joined the military, was to travel. Never got to.
No, you're lucky because I almost married somebody who had been in Afghanistan and the PTSD that he had
Yeah.
suffered from it, and I've interviewed a few others that have. You've saved yourself some PTSD along the way. I promise you that. I know like you've had your hardships, but you've definitely saved yourself some extra ones.
Well, I'll share this with your audience, and it's in my autobiography. It's on my website. It's on the sample chapters um, about my mental illness and my bipolar. Um, First, let me get one thing out there before I share those episodes. Guys, if you want to pick up a copy of my autobiography that did take me 30 years to write, I'll just say this to you. Um, I really felt that after I got my thing published earlier this year, that I didn't. My published company out in New York called me crazy because they said, "What do you mean, Mike, that you're not going to charge anybody a penny for your book?" So if you guys want to pick up a copy of my autobiography, I give it away for free to bring awareness to people that hear my voice, all these podcasts that I do, because I'm just trying to get the message out to the best of my ability and say, you know what, guys, it's about awareness. It's not about trying to make a buck. I did set up a donate tab on my website, and I don't say to people, oh, hey, give me cash on this side or whatever, because it's like, you don't have to donate anything if they don't want to. I have a
Right.
full 100% service connection from the military, so I'm set for life. So if they feel like God's telling them, hey, this guy's out there and he's just opening his heart to everybody, feel free to donate whatever, but again, you don't need to. So I want to make that clear to everybody. But let's get into the bipolar a little bit, because that really is, you mentioned, Jasmine, about the PTSD. I have PTSD, never having actually saw
So,
combat,
so do I.
because if
I
you,
have complex PTSD from life's traumas. So yeah, yeah, so I guess I shouldn't have said you don't have PTSD because I didn't really ask you that first, but I just meant their
right,
experiences were
yes.
pretty traumatic, right?
Yeah, and if you read on the sample chapters, I'll share this with you guys because this is in there. And this actually was not edited by my publishers in New York because I wanted to make it raw and share exactly how real and how traumatic it was. So there's two sample chapters that are on my website, theguttergospel.com. And the first one happened to me in 1988, July 31st in the morning, to be exact. I'll never forget that day because it went down in my personal life. In my room in my house, in my underwear with my at work, and he's degree in black in taekwondo, and he got me trained up to being the best physical shape of my life in the 80s. So I'm sitting there, Don's at work, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I just heard this little quiet voice say to me, Mike, stand up in the middle of the living room and fall back and I'll catch you. Okay, and again, guys, this is what's on the sample chapter, and so I did. And when I fell back and my ass hit the floor, all this demonic crap came into my head. I saw my dad, who had been dead for 8 years, right, telling me, now go grab the shotgun that we pheasant hunted with and blow your effing head off, right? That was what happened. And I'm hearing this, I'm seeing him, and I'm like, this makes no sense. I see all of this stuff happening in light. It was just going by so fast. So I was trying to fight it to the best of my own ability, but finally I just laid down on the floor with the shotgun in my mouth, and I was just about to pull the trigger. And can't really explain why, guys. Jasmine, I can't explain it. But what happened was, like, there was this wind that just picked me up and shoved me out the front door of the house in my underwear in broad daylight. Okay. So I'm running as fast as I can. And I get like 3.5 blocks up the road from my house. And all of a sudden I come to and I stop hearing the voices. I stop seeing the imagery and all this other stuff. And I kind of come to for a minute, and I'm looking around, and a couple cars are driving by, slowly looking at me like, what is going on with this dude? Right? He's out here and sweating profusely, and he's just looking like a ghost, right? Or something. Something's up with this guy. So, anyway, I was just not knowing what to do. I just slowly started to walk back to the house. I was terrified too, but I didn't have a choice. So I go back there, and everything resumes. And within, I didn't really have a grasp of the clock or the time, but a little while later, my buddy drops by to smoke pot with me. His name was Heath, and he said to me, he goes, Mike, what is going on with you? You look like you just saw a ghost. That was his quote, right? Because I was just
Because
sheet
you kind
white.
of did, right?
Yeah, exactly. I did. And I said, and here's where I was at with it, Jasmine. I was thinking to myself, do I dare share any of the truth of what just happened to me with this guy? Because he doesn't care about me, right? He's just here to get high. But anyway, so I didn't tell him anything. And I said, all I said when he made that comment, Jasmine, was I can't get high right now. I know that much. I just feel like I need to get to church, which was my quote to him. And here's what he said back to me. I'll never forget this. He said, Mike, let me get something straight with you, man. I didn't come here to get preached to by you. If you don't want to get high, I'll just stop coming. And that was the last day I ever saw Heath Hansen in my life,
Wow, that
right?
person really didn't give a crap about you at all. That's horrible.
So I was thrown aside by him, and I was thrown aside by everybody in my life as my
So was
story
I.
unfolds.
So
Yeah,
was I.
if you read through my story, guys, you're gonna say, how in the hell did this guy make it out of all of that?
That's
And I'm
like
gonna get
my
into it
story.
as yeah, it is. It is. Now, let me share with you the second sample chapter, which is even worse than the first. Okay. It is. I'm going to warn you guys this material is not for everybody
I put
because it
disclaimers
gets
up.
pretty
I put
graphic.
disclaimers up. Don't worry.
Okay, good. So on my second sample chapter, here's what had happened to me in my life. Now we're right before that was in '88, so we're forwarding 11 years in my life now, up until right before Thanksgiving in 1999. 3 days before, to be exact. So Y2K is going on and all that stuff, and you remember back then, right, Jasmine, with all
Yeah.
that going.
And
Anyway,
everybody was
so
freaking out.
yeah, yeah, the computers aren't going to work anymore because we're hitting 2000. So anyway, that's when that brings you right up to the moment with good old Mike. I had ordered 2 3 weeks earlier. I was up late one night. This infomercial on from Tony Robbins on how to become a more successful person, and I had been promoted up in the city transit system from a driver and a dispatcher into the management role, running the whole show with all these guys that wouldn't want to show up for work, and I was working nonstop, and I'm just like, man, I am so sick of all this, guys. You're making all these excuses. I actually heard him several times say I can't come because I got too drunk last night, so I had to
Who missed
figure
that?
out a way to cover. Yeah, I had to figure out a way how to cover all these routes and do all this stuff and paperwork, and it was just a nightmare job. But anyway, so ordered the thing from Tony Robbins, and it said 30-day money back guarantee. So to me, it was like, cool, I'll just jam it all in like a week or two, mail it back, and get my cash back. So anyway, oh, it gets better. So anyway, I did, and I was listening. I got addicted to these damn tapes, and I was listening to them nonstop pretty much, even at night. So now I'm getting short on sleep. So I'm driving back to work a couple of weeks later after cramming all this stuff into my little brain. And I'm hearing from Tony or from God or a combination of both as I'm driving. Mike, the questions were coming to me, and this nothing demonic yet.
Hmm.
Okay. But the question came to me, what do you really want out of your life, Mike? And I was sitting there thinking, that thought through, and I was thinking, well, more money would be nice or less stress. And it was like, no, no, no. So everything that I was coming up with was rejected. And finally, as I drive, you got to picture this. I'm on Main Avenue in Fargo, lunch rush, right? So there's traffic everywhere. And all of a sudden, this little voice just kind of said to me, Mike, what do you really want? And I said, I guess in the end, all I really want out of life is to be accepted. I just want acceptance. That's all I want. I don't want anything else, just to be loved and accepted. And the voice said to me, well, Mike, I do love you and I accept you and I died for you. Now go out and tell the world, right? That was the voice. So I get out of my car, I pull because I'd pulled over by now, and I start
Mm.
pounding on the hoods of cars, stopping traffic, because I'm cycling with my mania. I'm beginning to,
Yeah.
right? And it's set. So I was sharing this and stopping traffic, pounding on the hoods of the cars, saying, the end of the world is here. God loves you and he died for you. And I go out and tell the world and share this with the world message. And pretty soon a cop pulls over, gets me off the traffic jam and gets me situated on the side of the road. And another cop shows up, starts directing traffic and getting everything unraveled. So anyway, um, the cop asked me the question. He said, "Hey, are you what's going on here?" He was just trying to figure out, why I was in traffic. So his first question after that was, do you know somebody in town? Who do you have relatives here, or who do you know in town? And I said, well, for starters, I know your boss. And he said, what do you mean, my boss? And I said, I know the chief of police in town. He's married to my little sister, and
Hmm.
he still is, right?
Hmm.
So I said Keith Turnus was the guy's name, and he said, "Well, okay." So he broke that down after I explained it to him, and then he said, "Well, do you know anybody else in town?" And I said, "Well, I gave him my wife's name that runs a big social service program in town." So he's calling all these people, and he takes me to the hospital in the back of his squad car to get examined, and pretty soon all of those voices that were very peaceful and angelic and asking me the questions turned very demonic. And I was put up on a psych unit in that hospital, and I was beginning to just spin out of control, to put it nicely, and in a demonic way, very demonic way. So I was What happened was, Jasmine, I threatened to sue the hospital if they didn't release me that night immediately. And my wife was saying, Mike, no, you just need sleep. You're so overtired. You need
That's what
rest and all
creates
this.
a lot of
I
it too. I dated somebody who
Yeah,
had catastrophic brain damage, and if he would go when he would get manic, he wouldn't sleep, and it would make it so much worse that we'd have to take him to the mental hospital just so he could sleep and become his mind could go back to normal, you know?
yeah, exactly right. You just nailed it. And so what happened was, against doctor's orders, because I was insistent, they released me. So I'm back home now that night, and I'm pacing the floor. I can't sleep. I'm hearing those voices. And the next morning, Jasmine, this is all in the sample chapter. But the next morning, my wife said she could see my eyes roll back in my head, and I was screaming out in torment. And
Oh, that's awful.
experiencing I was experiencing what it would be like if I was cast into hell, right? So these doctors, I'm sorry, ambulance comes and puts a straitjacket on me.
Oh my
And
gosh, because like my ex had done
yeah,
the same thing, but they
yeah,
never put him in a straitjacket. Oh my gosh.
yep. And my 4-year-old son is witnessing all this, which just traumatized him for life. Right? And he's turning 30 in August. And it's like, I feel so bad. All of the stuff he had to witness growing up with me with bipolar. So,
But that's
anyway,
not
that
your
was for
fault.
starters.
It's not like you asked
Yeah,
for
I
this.
understand. Yeah, I know. No, it's just hard, having to live through all those years and to actually have been homeless shelters, and I just haven't even begun to scratch the surface on how bad it got later in life too. But anyway, so now we're in the padded cell. They put me in a straitjacket, right? For 3 straight days, I toured hell. I was like getting all the accusations thrown at me. I felt the heat. You name it. And if you read about it in the Bible, I experienced it. And it was like, oh my God. So here's what happened. After I came it, this nurse, when I first started to see a little bit of light after 3 days of darkness, and I start to come to in the padded cell, I get released from there. Now I'm in just a normal, quote unquote, on the psych unit, if you want to call it normal, but a normal room. I'm not in the padded cell
Yeah.
anymore. So I'm in there for a few days. I missed out on Thanksgiving that year completely because of what I went through. But long story short, this nurse comes in and she introduced herself to me. And Jazz, this is in the chapter, but she said to me, Mike, never forget this, Jasmine. She said, Mike, I'm Amy, and I want to share something with you. And I get emotional thinking about this. She said, when I saw you in there, your eyes were big as saucers. You look like a cornered animal that was just scared to death.
Feel
Can you
that. Like
imagine
chills.
that?
I couldn't imagine, and that it must have been
Yep.
horrifying to
And
picture yourself.
what's that?
It must have been horrifying just
I didn't catch
picturing
what you
you.
just said, Jasmine.
Oh, I said it must have been horrifying picturing yourself like that after
Yeah.
she told you
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Anyway, now we're done with all that. But that really fueled my alcohol addiction. I got fired from the city transit system like a year later because living through all the torment, I couldn't function in society anymore. I was just so out of it with alcohol use. The only job I could find after I got fired, and because I had quote unquote rose to the top in a great profession very rapidly, they looked at me as if I was some kind of oddball when it came to employment side of things, right? Trying to get a good fit for me, and that I couldn't get work anywhere, so I had to end up as a taxi cab driver at night, driving all the drunks around
Oh,
in the bar
fun.
scene,
I've
right?
heard the taxi driver
Yeah,
tell me stories. That's fun.
yep. And
You
they were making fun of me, of course, right? Saying, "What's the matter? You fucking, I'm sorry, you loser,
can say
you
whatever. I
can't get
have
a
the.
better job than me.
I can't
Yeah,
believe
you
people would
can't,
say
you
that
can't
to
get a.
you. Like
Yeah, I know.
that's like
And the way I would cope with it was, I was like, okay, so I guess I have to go home and drink after my shift to get
I'd have
all
to
of the
drink after hearing
crap.
all of that. Frig, like that's awful.
Yes. Yep. So, did that for a while, and I was just bouncing around odd jobs. And finally, what happened was I was going in and out of psych units. And in 2019, now we're fast forwarding in time, in the interest of time, to get to where it leads into the homeless shelters, it leads into all the rest. So 2019 year rolls around, and after a life spent with mental illness and addiction, I had my closest friend, only friend, was my dog Oscar, that passed away. And I was so depressed after losing Oscar that it was like I had to seek help because I was suicidal. And you know I should back up a step. In 2004, I did try to commit suicide again. That was my second suicide attempt, when I was a cab driver, because I was so depressed.
Oh,
I went into the
jeez.
basement of our house and I started to string myself up, and I heard this little quiet voice saying, Mike, your life still has a purpose, which is what I shared with you earlier in our interviews, that we all have a purpose. That's where that comes from. And it was like, okay, so now we're jumping into 2019 after Oscar passed away. I had sought alcohol treatment two prior times at the VA hospital, because I am a veteran. Down in St. Cloud, Minnesota, they have a big regional hospital there where they get guys in from all over the United States. So I met lots of great guys down there. I just love the veterans. I had um, big respect for those guys, even though I was kicked out after 2.5 years for smoking weed at the vets. So anyway, I'm there for the third time and not sleeping again. And you know what happens to people with bipolar, like you shared earlier, Jasmine, when they don't sleep, that's danger zone.
And they don't
So I'm
sleep a
not
lot in the
sleeping.
military. They test you that way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what has um, I was ready to be discharged, or so I thought, and this counselor of mine had said, well, we're going to have to get you up on the psych unit so we can evaluate you more. And I was in there for an extended period of time. And I'll never forget this one comment this guy made to me. And I'm not really here to preach the gospel. That's why the name of my book is what it is, just gutter gospel, because I've gone through the gutter to make sense of the
I've
gospel
had
to the
my own
best of my
miracles.
ability.
I've had my own miracles
Yeah.
and my own divine intervention in situations. So
Yep.
I'm right there with you.
Yes, ma'am. So anyway, she tells me, okay, you got to be up there. So I'm up there, and there's this guy that said, Mike, you know what? I don't know what it is about you, but you remind me of this character in the Bible named Job, where he lost everything, but one day in the future, everything was restored to him. And then I'll also share this with you guys that I think is really going to bless you, because it's happened to me now as I had survived all of my dark holes, and how I'm able to do podcasts now all over the globe. There was this Minrith Meyer Clinic, which was two Christian psychiatrists back in the 90s, and they were talking about bipolar. And one of the doctors said to the other one, he said, I have 7 children, and they have, every one of them is very successful in their field. They're either a doctor or a lawyer or a professor or some other high achiever. But then I've got my second youngest, which is where I fall in the lineup in my family. I'm the second youngest of 5, so he's got 7. And he said that little guy's got bipolar. But what he shared with the doctor was, he said, Frank, the way I look at it is, I think that little guy is going to outshine the rest of them combined. One day in the future, there's just something special about that little guy, you know? And I share that with your audience to say, if you are struggling with mental illness or addiction, or, your self worth, or whatever it is in life, whatever challenges you're facing right now, you matter in the grand scheme of things. You really do. You are so loved. And I share that because it's like, if Mike can come out of everything he has, and I finish getting into everything I have gone through, it's like he's there and he's survived, and his life now is great. So let me tell you the rest of how crappy I got before I get to the great part. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm in 2019, and they said to me, on the psych unit, Jasmine, check this out. Now, I bet you anything that what I'm about to share with you, most of the people in your audience, very few, have lived these challenges on top of everything else I just shared with you. They said to me, you know what? We're going to put you in a civil commitment. For 6 months, you're losing your freedom.
That happened to a
Okay.
friend of mine and
We're
he
going to
killed
put
himself
you
because
in
of
a,
it.
yeah, see? And what happened, Jasmine, is I had 2 of them placed on me, both in Minnesota and in North Dakota, because they shipped me out to my first homeless shelter in a civil commitment out in the middle of nowhere, little town called Allendale, Minnesota. And I was out to that in the country thing. And I just got a notice here. I don't know what's going on, but it says, oh, never mind, low net something. Anyway, yeah, so I was out there by myself and stuck. Are you still with me, Jasmine?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm stuck out there, and I made a break for it. I got on a bus, first I got arrested because I called my wife and she said, I'm going to call the cops on you because you need to go back to the homeless shelter. And
Mm-hmm.
I basically told her to F off. So I was at a Super 8 just trying to get a room for the night before I could catch the bus. And I didn't have any money, right? That's me being bipolar. I'm like, I'll figure it out,
Not
you know?
thinking about it.
So yeah, she called the cops. I was arrested, so I had to spend another night in jail there. And when I came back to Fargo, a buddy of mine got me up there. I write about it in 2019, the year in review in my book. And it's like, okay, so now you're back in Fargo. She meets me. I got a cab out of St. Cloud. And so she greeted me with 3 police cars and said, "What are you going to do now?" So I convinced her I was okay to stay in the house for the night. So she goes and stays with her parents. And I called 911 too many times that night because there wasn't any food in the house. So they arrested me and put me in the county jail, slapped a civil commitment on me in North Dakota. And I was covered head to toe in my own feces when I was in jail, cycling with mania. And that's when VA doctor saw me. And he said, the only hope for Mike now to stick him in the state mental institution for as long as possible until we can get him figured out. Okay. So now I'm out in the state mental hospital, and that's 100 miles straight west of me in Jamestown, North Dakota. And they would take me in a paddy wagon in chains, right? In the back of a paddy wagon in chains every week to stand trial before a judge to beg for my freedom to get released back into society. And I was rejected 5 different weeks in a row. So I had to go back to the state mental institution to live, right?
That's why I think my friend cracked
Finally,
and he did what he did
yeah,
because it's so like it's just so violating almost to feel that way, you know? Like they just take everything from you because they're not really trying to fix your mental issues. They're just trying to put you away and just not deal with the problem,
deal
you know what
with you, man. I'm living for that, aren't I?
I
And
mean? Hmm.
it's like, I just, so here's what happened to me. Finally, they said, okay, well, we'll get you out of the state hospital, but we're going to put you in another homeless shelter. Okay. So talk about trials. I've had my trials. So now I'm so called better to some degree, they think. So they put me in a homeless shelter in Fargo where we had the veterans upstairs and the criminals downstairs, and we would eat all of our meals together. Okay. So now I'm laying there, and this is how my life totally turned around. And this all was in 2019. Okay. This is how it flipped from going from the gutter to the road to redemption, which is in the book, right? So sorry to pimp my book because it is free. So I'm not charging, guys.
I'm
Okay.
actually gonna get it. I'm at the end. I when we're done, when I do editing, I'm gonna get the cover of the book and I'm gonna put it at the end of the episode so everybody can
Yeah.
see it so that they know what it looks like. Because I always find
Yeah.
that,
Beautiful.
yeah, and any links
I don't
you
know.
have.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see this here. I'll try and get a better view of it. But this is my custom gear. So it's
Okay,
up here,
yeah.
the Nike logo, 22 veterans per day for suicide awareness. That's how many kill themselves every day. My uh, flag getting raised. Former homeless veteran shares his true life story at theguttergospel.com. That's
All
my
right.
custom gear,
Send me a
and I
picture
wear
of
it
some of that
everywhere.
stuff too, and I'll put it at the end so everybody can take a look at it for you, okay?
Yeah, I'm going to definitely email those links over to you. I have a whole closet full of those things now from Custom Ink out in Virginia. So my life's turned. But anyway, how it turned, I'm laying in my cot or bed or whatever the hell you want to call it in a homeless shelter. And this lady comes in and says to me, Mike, you have mail today. I'm thinking to myself, who the hell would give me mail? I've lost touch with everybody. So she comes in and uh, she gives me the mail. I open it up. 2 big checks in there, 100% back pay from the military. with 100% service connection from the military, which means I get $4,000 a month tax free
That's
from the
amazing.
government. I booked the hell out of there so fast. I left half my clothes behind.
I would too.
And I never looked back. And I never looked back. And so, what I was sharing with you guys earlier about those two psychiatrists talking back and forth, and how bipolar little guy is going to outshine the rest of them. It just so happens that I have an older sister that's a doctor, and I'm outshining all of my siblings are both that I should say are all in high achieving professions, because now I get my message all around the globe with about the struggles, the triumphs. I cry like I was earlier, laugh with the guys that are helping me do the podcasting like you, and just grateful. I run across so many great people that have issues that are struggling, and it's like it's a universal truth. We all struggle with one thing or another. I just happen to have had to go through so much. But Jasmine, I think the lesson I've learned through it all is that it really gives me an empathic heart to people that struggle with addiction or trials or whatever.
And it helps you not feel alone. So before I let you go, is there any like last little tips and information or like any little goodies you want to share with us before I let you go?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I have a routine I'm in now to sober and clean, which has helped me for a long time now. And it is this: I get involved in the jail chaplain ministry. Those are great guys. I would encourage people. I read out of the Life Recovery Bible because that's kind of God's way of looking at addicts. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like I still love on you, and it's like it to say that nobody struggles or doesn't have issues is so false, because it's like it doesn't matter if it's a alcohol addiction to drugs, pornography, gambling. I mean, just name it. Everybody is facing issues. And what I found works for me is to be involved in small groups, reach out. And I always say this, and I almost forgot, that if you feel after listening to my story that you do not know where to turn, I give out my business email for you to personally reach out to me, and I will get back to you. Because what I do, first thing, turn my little head out of bed every day is to read a little bit out of the Life Recovery Bible, then answer those emails fast as I can. There's also links on my website for help. That's right next homepage. It says help for everyone. There's hyperlinks in there for the prayer line, for the prevention. You name it, it's up there. So people don't have to take their own life. Purpose, meaning as to why you were born, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do that. Go there, and if you can reach out to anybody, reach out to me, Mike at theguttergospel.com. That's my business email, which Jasmine knows. She's emailed me a few times.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that on the
Now we
link.
just got to get you the
Like your
yes, man. I just got to get you all my
information.
custom gear links, and yes, man. Just get it all to you, okay?
Sounds good. My internet, because I'm out in the country, seems to be cutting out, so that's why I'm gonna let you go now. But I hope to maybe do a part two with you. I would really like to do that when I'm at home and I have internet that actually works. So that we can fully get the rest of your message. But yeah, send me everything, and thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate how brave you were to share your story with us. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am, Jasmine, and thank you for having me on. And if you want to do another one, I'm free for you, okay?
All right. Well, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day, okay?
Yeah, you too. God bless. Bye bye.
God bless. Bye.